Hey, Shawn G here from Chasing the Truth. You're about to get some of the best of samples of shows I've done over the last 5 years. God bless y'all and enjoy.
Do ghosts really exist? Are we alone? Is there life after death?
It looks like a giant ape with a man's face.
Welcome to Chasing the Truth, from the normal to the paranormal. My name's Shawn Graham, and you caught me on the Dark Waters radio channel, folks. Today, we're chasing the truth on Bigfoot and Dogman and the research thereof. Now, Bigfoot, Dogman, cryptids, that kind of storyline is something I can really sink my teeth into because, folks, let me tell you, what's happening in my neck of the woods, Southwest Virginia, on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee, it's not only the birthplace, the home of country music. Yeah, that's right, country music, Bristol, Tennessee, Virginia, look it up. It also has a rich environment and stories about Bigfoot and cryptids. Now, in my neck of the woods, Bigfoot's referred to as wood bugger. And also, my grandmother, I can remember the first time I actually heard anything about Bigfoot. She referred to Bigfoot as the booger. Not the wood bugger, just the booger. The booger's going to get you if you stay out too late, Shawn. And I remember that as a little kid. But, let me tell you, it's a fascinating yarn to listen to and to tell. I've got many stories, and I haven't shared, but just a handful of them. But I've talked to a bunch of folks that have seen Bigfoot or Dogman. Go over to IamDarkWaters.com, and you'll find a bunch of my podcast and radio shows over there that have to do with Dogman and Bigfoot sightings, first-hand sightings. But for today, we have a treat for you. I've got a man that's prevalent in the Dogman Bigfoot community. His name's Dee Doss. He is part of the Bigfoot Dogman Research Project. You can find him over on Facebook. I think he's got a Twitter account too, but he's got a community over there on Facebook called Dee Doss, BDRP, Bigfoot Dogman Research Project. It's a community that was started by Dee Doss and his buddy Kirk Stokes. This community is dedicated to real investigations, research into the American cryptids. And this community is for men and women who take the time to do the in-field research to those who've had legitimate first-hand accounts, as well as people who truly wish to learn and contribute to the cryptid community. Now, Dee Doss is personally a independent Oklahoma, Texas cryptid field investigator and researcher and documentary filmmaker. I've had the pleasure of talking to Dee a couple of times, and he's finally agreed to come on board as Chasing the Truth and discuss for the next hour or two, however long he wants to talk, about his research into the cryptid and paranormal fields. So welcome aboard, Dee. How you doing today, sir?
Glad to be here. It's been a long time coming. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, I appreciate you coming on board, man. You kind of caught me off guard yesterday when you said, hey, what are you doing? So, yeah. Hey, I know that you're really into a lot of exploits and research down in Texas and I guess Arkansas and whatnot. Right. Let me tell you a little story about what I found in my youth. And at the time, I didn't know what the hell I was looking at. There was this back in the woods here in Southwest Virginia on the Kentucky border. I've been all over these mountains, and when I was real young, about 12 to 14, something like that, I was back in the mountains and virgin forest, and I was just traipsing along trying to figure out what in the world I could see, what I could find, find out if there's any blackberry spots where I can find some blackberry bushes later on in the season, that kind of deal. And I come upon these trees. There's about 4-year-old, 5-year-old saplings about the girth of a Coke can, ripped up, root ball and all, thrown up into the trees, and they're hooked into these larger trees, 4, 5, 6 feet off the ground. The root ball is. I'm kind of wondering, what the heck did I just see? And I kind of filed that away and put it under. I didn't know what in the world I was looking at. And later on, I kind of found out that might be a sign of something that's not exactly human. What's your twist on that?
That sounds like typical behavior of a Bigfoot. As to why they do it, I'm sure I do not know. They do things that, such as what you described, that are extremely strange, but may mean something to them. May be a sort of a mile marker for them. But I have heard of stuff like that before. Yeah. Not necessarily throwing the saplings into the trees, but saplings that are ripped up, and then they make these odd structures and glyphs out of them.
Oh yeah,
it's like you say. I don't see why a human being would do things like that.
Yeah, this was actually in the middle of nowhere. If anybody had any cause to be back there, it'd probably be deer hunting or trapping, or like I was, blackberry hunting. Trying to find out where the next blackberry bucket load of delicious berries was coming from. But yeah, right. That's crazy. I heard tell. Well, actually, you let me in on a little secret about a research project, a little thing that you're doing down in East Texas.
Yes, sir. On
some private property. Can you tell me about that? What's going on down in East Texas?
Absolutely. There's a gentleman named, we'll call him Mr. Preston for now. Mr. Preston is a war veteran who he didn't really get into the subject, didn't really know a whole lot about Bigfoot. He has property in East Texas near the Sabine River. And as we know, the river systems act almost as highways and interstate systems for these cryptids, Dogman and Bigfoot. So he and his wife, the first encounter actually was him walking to fill his deer feeders. He went to go fill a feeder, walked up to a tree that had one of these blackberry bushes down at the very bottom of it. And the tree and the bush began violently shaking, and he said he heard a growl that reverberated through his entire body. So, of course, he backs up real slow. He says he walked backwards for about 50 yards, dropped his bucket, and turned around and ran back towards his house. That was the first incident that he could recall. The second incident, which made him kind of look into what this could be, because he tried to attribute that to maybe a bear, even though it wasn't acting as bear do, and there are no black bear in the area, which would be the only bear in North Texas or southern Oklahoma that could do that. So he and his wife at the time were walking through the woods. It was the middle of the night. They're just walking their trails, and after going to the property, he keeps and maintains very good trails through this 15-acre parcel of land near the Sabine. And all of a sudden, they're hit with that same growl, and they can hear something like a train just barreling right towards them in the woods. He takes off running back down the trail towards the house. His wife was running as the crow flies, made a straight V-line towards the house. And she says that a large hair-covered arm reached from behind a tree and clotheslined her. Now, when we went back to that spot during the day, there was no tree that could even hide me. I'm 6 foot tall, 200 some odd pounds. So we're thinking she ran just right smack dab into one of these creatures. Mm-hmm. It's very, very thick, mixed pine grove forest. You could barely walk between the trees at some points, and then it opens up. Very low visibility at night, even with a flashlight. So he gets on the internet and he looks up what kind of creature could have a large hairy arm that would clothesline a person, and he starts looking into the Bigfoot thing. Time passes a little bit, and more incidents start to happen. He starts to hear screams out in his woods. They throw rocks on top of his roof. They're coming onto his porch, actually, and they've taken his dog bowl, thrown it out in the woods. So he calls my team over to investigate. We've been going for the past 3 weekends. This will be the 4th, this upcoming weekend. Trying to help him figure out what's going on, trying to find some preventative measures for these creatures that are encroaching on his land. And like I said, he's had rocks thrown on the house, the clothesline incident. They mess with the dog a little bit. They'll take his toys, throw them out in the wood. He has a chicken coop, which is, fenced off with chicken wire. You can see where they've forcibly pulled the chicken through this chicken wire. You know what I mean? And just taking bites out of them, throwing them on the ground, and kept going.
So is that typically is that behavior of pulling? Animal-wise, that behavior, pulling chickens through the chicken wire, is that behavior noted by any other mammal or whatever critter that would be around that area?
Right. Bobcats and mountain lions are present, on the Sabine River. But with the setup of this chicken coop that he has, nothing's going to be able to stick its arm through there and be able to grab one of these chickens and pull it back through without leaving more evidence of some sort of a struggle. Something with hands actually pull these things through this fence, these openings of the fence. And, there was evidence of where the chicken had been bitten. He has peacocks also. As you know, peacocks make a lot of noise.
Yes, they do.
A few of those were actually killed. So we went there and we did an overnight investigation into the early morning. We heard vocalizations coming from the river, which is only about a mile away as the crow flies from his property. Vocalizations during the early evening as the sun was going down sounded like two monkeys chattering to one another. It was very, very strange activity, but it was very, very prevalent though, and it baffles me as to how they use these waterways and these rivers and creeks to travel. And what I explained to him is he probably just opened up a Starbucks there right off of the Sabine River, killing all those hogs. There was a big hog infestation in North Texas and that part of East Texas, as well as Southern Oklahoma. And they were so prevalent that he was just shooting them and leaving them lie. Well, he walked his land and couldn't find any of the bodies. And as we were going through our investigation, we couldn't even find any hog wallers, any signs of hogs. We probably found 3 tracks over the entire 15 acres, which was very strange to me.
Wow. So was there anything like other evidence of critters or creatures, like hair evidence left on bark, or footprints, indentions, any kind of blood sampling, anything that would be evidentiary of having a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot around that area?
That's a good question. We actually found 2 sets of footprints that we casted. One was 16 inches long, 6 inches wide, and another one that was smaller, just a little bit more than a little bit bigger than a big man's foot. And what interests me the most is we found 2 sets of knuckle prints. One was the right hand and the right knuckle, and the other one was a hand print. And this was near a lagoon where it looked like one of the adolescents, because it wasn't that big of a hand print. Looked like one of the adolescents may have braced itself to lean down and drink out of this lagoon. And the other one was a picture perfect knuckle print near the first footprint that we found. And as we were casting that print, we heard movement to our left, which would be our east, coming from the thick brush, lo and behold, going towards where the river is. So I found that extremely fascinating. And like I say, he's a military, lifetime military veteran. I think he spent 20 years in the military. The guy's as hard as a coffin nail. Great guy, good disposition. But these things were encroaching on his house a little bit too much, and he didn't really know what to do. And that compelled us to go ahead and go out and see what we could do for him.
And so did you put out any way to catch evidence, like these movement cameras that deer hunters love to leave up on trees or anything of that nature?
Right. He actually had some. And what we did, we had him move his game cameras out of the woods and attach them to his house, where we believed that they were entering to actually come up onto his porch. There was evidence. He put out these tiki torches. He had a beautiful long wooden porch, put tiki torches at each of the 4 corners, and they were, tied down with bungee cord. Well, the bungee cords has actually been untied, and the tiki torches is kind of thrown off into his backyard. So we had him put the game cameras in the direction where we believed they to be coming and encroaching upon the main property in the house. The first time we were there, and it's just very, very, it's very, very good land for these creatures. There's a fresh spring, and as we were there, another fresh spring just happened to pop up. So you got 2 fresh water sources. You have game that come through the property, and when he was shooting the deers, of course, natural like berries and nuts and things of this nature. And plus, I believe them to be omnivores. So they plus their size of these creatures, whether it be Dogman or Bigfoot, they have a large muscular nature, which is going to take a high protein diet. So I believe that they're constantly eating. But as far as that, we put up the game cameras to see if we can catch any movement, and also that acts as a deterrent for these creatures from coming up onto the house.
So, did you find any other research that I've personally done? Obviously, I'm not on the level that you've done. Did you find any places like where they would bed down, make camp, or whatever? Are they creatures that make camp and stay there for a while, or are they just one of these mover gatherer kind of?
That's an extremely interesting question. I'm glad you asked it. He has a pond right off, and this is actually a cabin. It's a cabin that he built off of an old trailer house, like a one-bedroom trailer house, and he extended it into a cabin. But at the very back of the cabin, past this long deck that I was telling you about, is this spring-fed pond. On the other side of the pond is these blackberry bushes. We went on the other side of the pond, and you can see where something's been bedding down and eating those berries, and you can see perfectly straight into the house, at least the back part of the house from the back door, if you were to lay down in there. So we found this part where they were, bedding down. He actually caught eye shine on camera coming from that area, as well as other places on the property near the, because it's not his property that goes actually to the Sabine. You'd have to cross some barbed wire. But where that barbed wire is, you can see where one of the posts had actually been bent. And I mean, you and I both know it's going to take a strong man from the circus to bend those posts.
Yeah. But
one has actually been bent down to where they could step over. And you could see not necessarily structures to live in, but the X structures, the upside down A's that they had built the further you go down into this wood line that travels to the river. We didn't never find any bedding where they were actually bedding down on the property. We believe they'd be coming up from the river itself. And that's going to be the next arm of the investigation when we go back, is actually spending a day and a night hiking that entire river to see if we can find some sort of a living quarters or bedding or something like that.
Okay. Well, since we're just right on the cusp of the ending cusp of a rather large polar vortex that dipped way down south. These creatures, how do they protect themselves from extreme colds? Like up in the Canada and the Midwest and northern Midwest, those temperatures got down in the negative 50s and 60s Fahrenheit level. Right. How do they protect themselves from that?
Well, there's no way for me to know for sure. I could just guess, but my guess would be, as I've always said before, I believe that they have incredibly thick hides underneath a thick layer of fur. But we also have looked into the underwater coves where you find river systems. You'll find coves, which more than likely will lead to some sort of a cave system. Mm-hmm. And I strongly believe that they spend at least part of their time underground, which, with that compacted nature of some underground cavern, if you get more than one of these creatures, say it's a family pod or a tribe or a family unit or whatever anybody wants to call them, they pack themselves together, much as people are taught to do in the military, and share that body heat. I've actually thought about that too. The negative 50-degree weather in some parts of the United States, like it wouldn't take any time at all for anything to freeze to death. But how do deer and other creatures survive that? And I strongly believe that they're going into natural cave systems.
So where would be, obviously we just acknowledged and found, just talking about this thing in East Texas on this private property that you've just investigated was prime land for Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever you want to reference them as. Where would be the unlikely places in the United States or Canada or wherever that you've researched? Where would be the unlikely places these things would not be?
The most unlikely place that I would think they would be the desert regions. Lack of food sources, especially water. They have high protein. They have a lot of muscle mass, so they have high protein diets. So I don't think that they would really put themselves that far away from a natural food source. I believe the desert regions and possibly some of the plain regions, western Oklahoma, western Texas, where it still has the desert type topography. Those would be the only places that I don't think would be able to sustain a creature like this.
Okay, so do they obviously survive based off of cooperation with a family group, correct?
Right, right. I mean, from my studies, I think they do, but you also have the cases of the lone rogue males. Much like lions, when the young males come to term or come of age, they're excommunicated from the group in such a way, and they go off and they either find themselves a mate or they go and take over some other tribe of Bigfoot. But there has been cases in Utah, even New Mexico, of these things actually traveling through desert areas. But I find it very, very hard to believe, and I may be wrong, but I find it hard to believe that they would occupy areas like this on a regular basis.
So just need to, being pushed out of a particular area into an unsafe desert area without the, I can see that.
Right.
Let's see what else what kind of equipment have you used to track and research these Bigfoot, these cryptids?
We've been using before I was just doing it, the old gumshoe style notebook, compass, Google Earth, but we've incorporated night vision, FLIR. FLIR is the biggest help that anybody can have in investigating these things, I believe, especially if you're in a highly active area. When a flashlight can only show you so much, and they blend in so well. When you have that FLIR, you're getting the difference in body temperature, especially as cold as it's been. So, depending on generation 1, 2, depending on what kind of FLIR you have, you're going to get a fantastic shot of something out there that has red blood, just like we do. Mm-hmm. Again, it depends on the brand and the price and all that kind of stuff. But even the most basic FLIR would be better than nothing in certain areas.
Okay, so have they? I'm assuming that these creatures are very intelligent. Have they confiscated a piece of your equipment or anything like that to study it? I'm just coming out of pocket here. Have they done anything like
right.
that?
We had an expedition into my main research area up in southern Oklahoma, Brown Springs, where we actually, were leaving things, toys and stuff like that to see if they've taken them. We left a gorilla, and we wrapped all these little things in like Mardi Gras beads. We wrapped a gorilla in Mardi Gras beads, left some Hot Wheels cars and things of that nature. And we came back the very next week. And where we left them at wasn't a highly trafficked. There was a very, very low traffic of human beings, and we couldn't find hide nor hair of any of those things. We've gone now probably 10 square miles within the same area, the area that they seem to occupy, and we've never been able to find one of those items we left out. Now, have they taken game cameras or things like that? We've only left out, and when I say we, I'll bring out different team members that I have, but we've only left out game cameras in the area once, and we actually didn't really catch anything of worth on there. But no, they've never bothered any of our actual equipment or anything like that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to borrow a page out of my brothers and other people I know that do a lot of deer hunting and large game hunting. Do you utilize scent attractors or use special kind of soaps or anything like that to take away your own personal scent to go and do these hunting expeditions or these research expeditions?
No, I don't. And the reason being is it's very rare, but there could be other creatures out there too. In a highly occupied area like Brown Springs, I don't really worry about that kind of stuff. I know what you mean, like the odor eliminators and pheromone eliminators and stuff like that. I really don't do that, and I don't suggest it. And this is just my personal opinion that I don't want to sneak up on one of these things. It is possible. They are extremely intelligent, but I don't want to catch one with their pants down and surprise them because I don't know what the reaction would be. And we believe Mr. Preston over there in East Texas, when he snuck upon the one that was shaking the tree very violently, he believes he did that because he uses the special soaps and detergents and, sprays himself down, his socks, his boots. And we believe this creature was watching this feeder and have been for years. And maybe it didn't smell him coming up, or maybe it didn't hear him. He says he moves quietly through the woods, and I've been out there with him. He actually does. So that's a situation I don't want anybody to be in. I'm not sure what they would do when you surprise them or catch them with their pants down, but they don't seem to like to be seen. They like to be elusive, these creatures. So, and that obviously applies to Dogman as well, because there's less sightings of Dogman than there is Bigfoot, and barely anybody gets to see either one of them. So I really don't suggest it myself. I mean, I guess if under certain circumstances, if I was going to go and investigate areas that I've never been to before, and if I was going to investigate areas I've never been to before, I would use those type of things. But as far as my areas, no, I'll never use them and probably never will.
Okay, so it's we've been talking about Bigfoot all this time. What has been your most impressive Dogman report or sighting or encounter yourself?
The most impressive was sent to me by a nurse in Arkansas. This nurse said that she her land is occupied by a group of Dogmen, that one actually came up to her porch, and it was an unnatural Dogman. Now, the kind that occupies her property is what she called natural Dogman. She says they're beautiful. They look like upright walking timber wolves. But the one that approached her porch was an unnatural creature. She said that it was large, looked like it was covered in pus. Hair was falling off of it. Eyes were lopsided, had scary looking teeth. And when she heard it approaching, she thought it was one of these natural Dogmen. Now, these natural Dogmen have occupied this property for 15 years. It got to the point where the mailman won't deliver the mail because they're just walking around on this property during the day. But when this unnatural Dogman started approaching the porch, she had her back to it. She didn't see it come. Then when she turned around, so she saw this monstrosity and ran into the house. Later on that night, she says she hears this god-awful screams and howls coming from the woods. She went the next morning and to see where these howls and everything were coming from, walked back to the source of the noise and saw just a puddle of blood. No hair, nothing, just a big puddle of blood, and drag marks where it was dragged literally off of her property. So she believes that the natural Dogman that she's been dealing with for 15 years killed this unnatural one. And I don't know if I mentioned before, but it had a smell of sulfur coming off of it. Killed this unnatural one and drug it off of their property.
So that's a wild story. So what?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So what's the difference between a natural and unnatural? Is there classifications? I know that there's a popular thing out on the internet that classifies this, that, and the other from, sort of like hunting deer, what kind of type of deer you're hunting, that kind of deal. Is there something like that? Is it just popularized, or is there actually?
Well, not for me. When I say natural and unnatural, the unnatural creatures. And I know what you're talking about, that type A, type B, all that kind of stuff. I don't really get into that because it kind of closes people's minds into the possibilities of what could be. And that's just my opinion. Once you start putting classifications on an unknown species, you start closing doors on the possibilities of that species, if that makes sense. Right. But when I say unnatural, what I mean is something that just looks, demonic. She said this thing smells like sulfur. Looked like it had pus balls on it, hair falling off, much like a skinwalker. A skinwalker is something, given the origins of that being, which it's not even really a creature. I would say that that's an unnatural creature. It came to be by unnatural means.
Right. Okay. All right. So, are there more docile Dogmen versus aggressive Dogmen kind of deal? Are they typically female that are docile or female that are more aggressive? Have you discerned anything like that?
it's hard to say because you have to take it by a case by case basis. I would say that honestly, that in a lot of people wouldn't agree with me, but dogmen are more docile than Bigfoot. And the only reason I'll say that is because there are more encounters with Bigfoot that are aggressive just because there's more Bigfoot around. I honestly believe that the dogman creature is an extremely rare type of creature, that there's not a lot of them around whatsoever. So
Hey, folks, thanks for listening to this best stuff sample of some of my 5 years in doing this radio show podcast called Chasing the Truth. Please visit imdarkwaters.com, or you can email me at ShawnG@imdarkwaters.com. And my numbers and links are in the description below. God bless y'all, and I'll catch y'all on the flip side.